Hello, my name is Samuel Cochran, and my project is expanding the imagination for the animal kingdom. Now, what exactly do you think that means? Well, it all started when I met with Ken Smith before I entered my training to be a Waldorf teacher, talking about his fourth grade student that was very obsessed with wolves. But it wasn't that he was just going to talk about facts about the wolves. He was talking about what it means to be the wolf. And that I found the most intriguing thing through our conversation that I wanted to pursue Waldorf education. And I was very curious and very enthusiastic of when I actually can start learning about animals through the Waldorf way. But it only had one block, whereas Man is a Symphony, and I was kind of left thinking, is there more? And there was more. And that's when I started to do my own self-study to find out what I can do more to expand on for my own knowledge to improve the animal block for myself. And from what I've learned, from what Steiner once said, is that animal kingdom is one side of the human soul. Now, that I found interesting, and it's mostly what it's alive that we have for the animal soul and the human soul. Animals that are no longer with us, such as the dodo bird, the quagga, they're no longer with us. Even if you genetically modify one, they're still not here. It's just a zebra or just a fat turkey with a different bill. And that's also, you can see the same thing for animals from the Ice Age or dinosaurs. They're gone, and we have the remnants of them, but we don't know what they're like, despite what we might think of them we see from movies. Now, I also want to know more about what it means to be the animal when it comes to who they are, beyond what Steiner says about them being. The head is the bird, or represents the bird. The lion or the predator represents the rhythmic system or the heart. And the cow or other grazing animals represent the digestive tract or the stomach of the human being. Now, I also explored more into Charles Kovacs and what he explained in his other pictorial way of explaining the animal kingdom is that where all animals have an emphasis on the three parts of their bodies: the head, the torso, and the limbs. Now you can say that the head would be considered the cuttlefish, Steiner's favorite animal, as well as could be an elephant for the torso. But for the limbs, you'd think it'd be something like the bird. No, it's actually us. We are the limb animal because we have cognitive thought and we have motor skills that we're able to create something. And it's just as Ken also once said, is that our limbs are not very special. I mean, we can make things, sure, but physically, naturally, they're kind of useless. Now, going beyond that, I wanted to know how the children can learn for the animals by just being with the animals, working with the animals. And aside from them being at a zoo or an animal sanctuary or aquarium, there's also biodynamic farms or even Camp Hill communities. And even with the Camp Hill community, they treat animals if they are part of their community, not just property. And around that time, I only got to see chickens and a cat, but from what I heard, they have a relationship with sheep and horses that they work with their neighboring farms. And other Camp Hill communities have more of an emphasis on animals because they have more land and they can do more things with it. And close by, I got to visit the village in Santa Cruz, which is a preschool that is inspired for Waldorf education. And the owner uses animals as a way for her pedagogy. And that includes the children taking care of rabbits, chickens, birds that come passing by, dogs, turtles, and fish. And even when they see fish being gutted or prepared so they can make fish soup, the children are so intrigued by the bones and the eggs and even the blood. And even some adults are grossed out by that, but these children are so captivated by just this dead fish because they just want to know more about the animals. And so also hit me that there are some students, even for Waldorf education, can't actually have these relationships with the animals. Some are not close enough to these farms, and some are not fortunate enough to live by a zoo or an animal sanctuary. So it's our job as teachers to bring that animal kingdom to the students. And I spend much of my time also observing the animals for also a means of telling them from an artistic way. So during my time, after my practicum, I spent time observing animals through Little Farm with Margaret Hilberlin. And we spent much of our time drawing sheep. And I will be showing you a few sketches of what I have been doing. And so during my time with Margaret, we were able to, here we go. We were able to spend some time looking at the sheep, but not by its details, but by its morphology. As you can see, I had to squint my eyes and focus more on the geometry of the animal rather than just trying to get every little piece of the wool, and if they had a horn, I had to draw the horn in some particular way. It was really just its essence of what we had to do, similar to our Girton observation for plants and rocks, or minerals, I mean. I also spent some time at the zoo on my own. I had this big, large clipboard with the paper I used for my study of man, and I took some pastels and I drew the lions, the giraffe, and I had sort of a connection with this giraffe because even when I was just drawing his face and his neck, he just kept looking at me. He probably wanted food, but he also, from what I heard from the zookeeper, they really enjoy attention from the humans, which is kind of gained a little bit of a connection through this giraffe. So with Margaret's help, additionally, other than sketching, I also spent some time working on painting through bringing out my imagination. And I used it with a veal painting in the beginning, which I were to bring out something out that I was focusing on rather than just bringing anything out that I did in the second year during the summer. What I also did was take the time to do a wet-on-wet painting that you can see right here that I will unveil. This painting is from the very first story I ever told through my Waldorf journey. One time at Camellia Waldorf as a guest, and another time during my second practicum with East Bay Waldorf in the second grade class. Through this, I was spending my time using my imagination through what the lion looked like. I spent some time observing the lions, and as well as the rabbits. In Little Farm, they have a little section where the rabbits are incubated, and I'm able to get an idea of the morphology through the rabbit and the lion. Now, when I did extra research about this too, about morphology, and part of it is what Goethe did, is that he spent a lot of what I did is just observe other animals. But he only observed the exterior of the animal, such as the rhinoceros, where the rhinoceros has a purpose for every little bit of his biology, including his horn. For if he were to have the horn, he can't have molars on the top of his mouth. He can only have lower set of teeth. And it's also why it's impossible for other animals to get this horn, such as the lion. The lion can never become like the rhinoceros, even through macroevolution. A lot of animals have their limitations, and that is what you learn through observing these animals. That doesn't have to necessarily be only about bringing in an artistic approach or just doing it for an observation exercise. It can also be done with storytelling. And for me, I used it to also help bring in the animals through the fables at first to bring out a little bit more of the animal's characteristics through the story. It doesn't have to, and you don't have to intellectualize it for the children. You just have to have a more of a sense for the animal to bring it to the children so it becomes more alive. I'm going to tell you a very quick part of the beginning of my story that I told to second graders throughout my journey. And so the little rabbit just kept sleeping, thinking that the world was breaking up, when he was just sleeping under the mango tree. But then he heard a loud thump, and he scurried off. Now, that was okay, and I can't bring back what I've told before, but all I was trying to really do at the time was just tell a story. I wasn't really trying to bring anything other than plot lines and getting the moral across to the children. And that's not exactly what you need to do with storytelling. Now, through this scene I have right here through my painting, what I'm going to do is retell that scene that gets closer to the end. And just so you get an idea, in case you haven't heard the timid rabbit, that is a Jataka tale from India. The rabbit believed that he heard a sound that the earth was breaking up by one of the Hindi gods, and all the animals were about to run into either a cliff or a shore where all the animals could either drown or fall to their death, and the lion stops them. And so eventually the rabbit confessed that what he heard, and from here I'm going to continue it in more of a storytelling approach. And so the little rabbit took off his paws and jumped off of the lion's large hind legs. And they both agreed that they would circle around the tree where the rabbit sleeps. The rabbit had his ears perked up behind his head, squiggled his nose, and did small, anxious little hops across the tree around its roots and its shade. And as for the lion would take his long, muscular paws and stride cautiously, almost if he was looking for prey for something for him to eat. But then he looked down and noticed a slight large mango that was almost rotting a little bit. And he took with his paws, extended with the claws so they would not be hooked or fall out of his paws or its grip. And he examined it. He looked up with his neck, with his large yellow eyes, and he had a loud, thunderous roar of a laugh. The little rabbit looked him still with his ears perked behind his head, anxiously wondering what was going on. And so you see, little rabbit, as the lion went on to explain, this was no more than a mango that fell off the tree. The earth is not breaking up. In conclusion, really tapping into the animal kingdom helped me as a future Waldorf teacher learn more through observation, not just as a scientific way, but also to bring it to children in multiple ways through their imagination, so they can get more in tune with the animal kingdom if either they are very fascinated by the animal kingdom or they have zero to no interest of the animals. And for my interests, I wish to bring that to the children so they can get interest throughout their time here on Earth. Thank you.